Hello and welcome to our UFC 265 post show. I am John Pollock, joined as always by Phil Chertok, and an historic outcome from the Toyota Center. We have a UFC interim heavyweight champion that has been crowned. How are you, Phil?
I'm great. Not just the interim champion, the first interim champion from France.
That is a hell of a qualifier. The first interim champion from France. A country never forgets its first interim champion.
Who was the first Canadian interim champion?
Did George St. Pierre. He had the interim title that he beat Matt Hughes for when Matt Serra had the injury that prevented their fight from happening. And then George St. Pierre put the belt down in December of 2007 and said, I don't even want this. I know this is a bullshit belt. I want the real one. And I'm going to beat Matt Serra at the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And what did he do? He kneed Matt Serra's ribs out of Canada and became the undisputed actual welterweight champion in April of 2008. First UFC card on Canadian soil.
Yes, I remember the promo that you were talking about. It was just on RDS, which is why nobody else recalls it.
Well, we have France's first interim champion to discuss, and we're going to be going into all of the fights from UFC 265, a card that I will say I don't think this felt like one of the big UFC pay-per-views of the year. Certainly pales greatly in comparison to 264, and dare I say, Phil, that I think it is going to pale in comparison to 266 at the end of September. However, the next UFC pay-per-view is September 25th. We are speaking on August 8th, technically, because we are past midnight. I don't know what fights will stay together in that amount of time, knowing the UFC's luck here. I mean, they're pushing 3 5-round fights for September 25th. God knows how many we'll have once we get to the end of September. But this is a pretty big gap between pay-per-views.
Yeah, it's a huge gap. And I mean, that fight card also includes, Nick Diaz, which, that's a phantom until, it's fight time. Could see some changes ahead of that. And then I just found out they're running a card against SummerSlam and the Pacquiao fight as well. So that's going to be that one's going to sort of slip under the radar, I think, for a lot of people.
What are you talking about? Jared Cannonier and Kelvin Gastelum. Okay, they are loading up for they're off next weekend. A very rare weekend off for the UFC. So you will have Bellator and PFL to keep you satisfied next weekend. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get into UFC 265. Tonight's card, realistically, this is not hyperbole. It was totally built around Derrick Lewis to the point that they felt that this needed a championship attached to it. Francis Ngannou, he's left this division completely dormant because we have not had a heavyweight title fight in this division since the end of March. It's August. What's going on here? We need to get this division rolling. So Derrick Lewis fighting in Houston, he couldn't just be fighting for the photo op at the end. He needed a championship. So they created a championship. However, it was not Derrick Lewis that was presented with this title. Instead, Ciryl Gane in what was a very one-sided fight, Phil. What I saw tonight was the Derrick Lewis that fought Francis Ngannou 3 years ago. However, it was not Francis Ngannou across the octagon from him, who was also equally tentative. It was Ciryl Gane who had a very precise game plan and, controlled this fight from the moment it started. And I think you had a Houston crowd that was just hopeful of Lewis landing that one big shot, and every Derrick Lewis fight is going to have that intrigue. But this is a guy that, to me, never got out of the gate tonight.
Oh, absolutely. There was nothing there. Quite frankly, I didn't expect there to be much there at all. Like I sort of thought it would go.
Do you know how many significant strikes he landed in the entire fight?
5, maybe
8.
Okay.
Like this was a really bad performance for such a big, high profile fight. And that is going to be a bit of a a tag, I think, that is going to be attached to Derrick Lewis when we have seen the Ngannou fight, which was, in essentially a number one contenders fight. Then we had when he challenged Daniel Cormier later that year. And then this, I mean, these are his biggest fights. These have been performances that Derrick Lewis has not been able to perform at a level we have seen him in. Like, this is not the most well-rounded fighter, but he is certainly much better than this.
Yeah, I definitely agree that this will, live with him. He's always sort of been this like almost like a comedic sort of character, and people didn't take him seriously. But when you're knocking people out and you've got a championship title fight, people have to take you seriously. But that can kind of go away again right after a performance like this. But it really didn't surprise me because he just is not technical at all, and I've seen him fight like this before. What actually surprised me is towards the end of the fight, how Gane was willing to sort of exchange in the firefights with him. He sort of lost, Derrick Lewis lost the respect that Gane was giving him, and he wasn't afraid to trade with him, and that ultimately led to the finish, I think.
Yeah, it was like the most exciting exchange of the fight was reserved for the closing sequence because early on, it's just Lewis reacting and standing, like doing nothing in the opening round. There was a low shot to Gane, so there was a brief timeout, and Gane is just, he's kind of circling around. He's picking his shots. He landed this right hand over the ear and then a leg kick and this hard jab on Derrick Lewis. So really just establishing his striking superiority in the first round. That continued in the second. There was some clinch work from Gane as he was repeatedly landing knees while using wrist control, and landed this big elbow over the top in the closing seconds. And we go to the third round. Gane is kicking away at the leg, and Lewis would take some shots, but it was really nothing that was threatening. There's an uppercut from Gane. He's attacking with his left hands. And in this mix-up, Lewis actually loses his mouthpiece, and Dan Margliotta steps in to reinsert the mouthpiece. And they get into this big flurry, and eventually Lewis just goes down, and he gets finished with strikes from Ciryl Gane. 4 minutes, 11 seconds of round number 3, and the significant strikes, 99 for Gane, and 8 for Derrick Lewis.
Yeah, like you said, not a spectacular performance. I mean, it was built really around the idea that he just needed to land one shot. Well, he got 8 of them and he couldn't get it done. So yeah, back to the drawing board for Derrick Lewis. And it's, I mean, when you can knock out people spectacularly, it's hard to say in a limited division that you're never going to see a title shot, but it feels like a real long road back to that spot after a performance like this when you're the hometown draw.
Do you think that like takedowns were even an option here for a Derrick Lewis? Like, we know what pressure this guy has if he can get on top of someone, and his corner, like after the second round, his corner has no answers for him. They're just saying, you're down 2 rounds. We don't have much to tell you than what we said after the first round. Like obviously this game plan is done. And it just seemed that, this was a guy that was out there, and he had no ability to adjust or go for anything. And this was just a countdown to Gane eventually finishing him or continuing to punish him and ride out a decision victory. It was one of those very frustrating performances where you weren't even, like, Lewis couldn't get any of his striking game off. So there was the decision, like, do you try and at least change something up that maybe you're going to surprise Gane? And even if you are getting him to sprawl, that's going to leave him open for a right hand.
Yeah, I think when they got in the clinch a couple times and they were sort of doing like a little test of strength, Lewis did try to throw him to the ground, but I don't think it was ever going to be part of his game plan because that's not what he's practicing, and it's a lot of effort to try to go for takedowns. So even though you're absolutely correct, you've got you've got to change things up. It's also, when your whole story is the one punch knockout, all you need to change up is land that one punch, right? So it kind of goes away from his whole game plan to begin with.
So Gane improves to 10-0, and he should really be the focus here. I mean, he came out, he fought Derrick Lewis the right way, and this is a guy that he is, this is someone that can exhibit a lot of patience, but when needed, turns that volume up, and did so a few times in this fight, especially towards the end. And coming out of this fight, your direction. This was hilarious. Daniel Cormier is interviewing the new interim champion and notes how the undisputed heavyweight champion is Francis Ngannou. I love this.
Undisputed, yes.
The undisputed heavyweight champion. So this title is not even worthy of a dispute. But that is the fight to make, Phil. But I'll say this, that obviously this would be an amazing fight to be able for the UFC to be able to go to France with. But I will say, with where we are in the world, I don't think you're running France anytime soon.
Yeah, and it's a nice idea to go to France, but you've got a heavyweight title fight with a knockout, machine that screams Vegas, and that's where Ngannou's based. So that fight's going to be in Vegas.
Do you foresee any hold up here? It's not as though things have been. It sounds like Francis Ngannou and Dana White, they are communicating through the media, and I don't know how much discussion is going on with Ngannou's camp, but it does seem like there is a lot of friction there in that relationship, to the point that the next question is going to be, if Gane is ready to fight and you're having these issues, we may see a Gane interim title defense against someone not named Francis Ngannou, and then this thing is just another mess.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is the fight that they pretty much have to make without turning it into a complete shit show.
See, I don't feel they are in a position now. They don't feel there's any fight they have to make. They have so much power, and this interim title is just them showcasing. You want to sit on the sidelines? That's great. We're gonna move on. We've got this guaranteed money, and we're just gonna keep moving forward. That's what tonight was. It was essentially saying we can just at will create a title, and if we want to go ahead and have Ciryl Gane fight Curtis Blades, we'll do that.
Sure, they can do that, but they also want to put on the most lucrative fights, right? They do want to make money, and they do want to put on the fights that people want to see, and people are not going to be.
Okay, Phil. Then why are we nowhere close to Francis Ngannou and John Jones? Much less waiting for, like, tonight's card was. This was very much for the Houston market. They did a great, they pretty much sold out the Toyota Center, but this was not a lucrative fight for the masses. And I don't think they feel that pressure to have to make John Jones with anyone. It seems like these are your demands. Cool. We're not meeting them. So when you change your mind, we'll be here and we're moving on. Like, I don't know if they feel that pressure to have to put on the biggest fights possible when this deal with ESPN Plus gives them like this guaranteed revenue for their pay-per-views. Like, it's nice for a live gate to have a Connor fight or a Jones fight.
Sure. Okay. Well, look, first of all, ESPN is your television partner, and they're selling pay-per-views, so they want you to put on the biggest events possible. And then you're still selling to bars, you're still selling international pay-per-views. So there is always going to be this idea that you do want to sell the biggest pay-per-views. Now, not every pay-per-view can be the biggest one, and as you mentioned, this was definitely geared towards the Houston market. That's why they put this title fight there, right? They thought, this was the second time in Houston in a few months. It wasn't a sellout, right? You saw lots of empty seats there. So, and I'm not saying it was a good tool, like it made a difference, but that's, I think, the reasoning. Ultimately, yeah, they don't need any specific fighter. They don't need to fulfill that. No, they can wait forever and not have John Jones fight. But on the whole, they do need to put on big fights, because what else are they doing? That's the whole point of the UFC.
Well, obviously, I think that Ngannou and Gane is going to be the direction, and in a weird way, like this tonight's card, I think Gane gets a nice win and it points everyone in that direction. And I think that does kind of cool off the John Jones talk. I think a lot of the fan base is looking at that's not happening in the meantime. And here's this other fight that now we have more of an interest in after seeing Ciryl Gane tonight perform in the way he did. And you're going to have Ngannou and Gane be the destination that I think fans are going to look at as the more realistic fight that the UFC can put together in a reasonable amount of time.
I kind of felt that already had happened. Like it sort of seemed like right after the Ngannou win, if the Jones thing was going to happen, it was going to get hot and they were going to figure it out. And it cooled off right away. And so, and it's, they'd already moved on to Derrick Lewis and they were selling Ngannou versus Derrick Lewis and people were okay with that. It's just they couldn't work out on the timing of it. So if they're able to settle things with Ngannou and he's not too pissed off, it is a pretty exciting fight that I think the fans will get behind because, we were talking on the preview show and mentioning how Gane is, has a sort of like this style that's technical and not too exciting. Well, look, he turned that technical style into an exciting finish. So hopefully that creates a little bit more excitement for an Ngannou fight.
Last thing on the heavyweight division, one name that is not coming up too often is Stipe Miocic. And what do you see as his future in this heavyweight mix?
He's in a tough spot, right? It doesn't seem like the UFC is terribly interested in giving him a title shot. And, there's already a queue. The idea of a John Jones fight is really interesting. But I just feel like if you're the UFC and you're gonna invest in Jones at heavyweight, it's gonna be in that Ngannou fight first. So yeah, a bit of no man's land for him. Yeah, I don't really know what to do with him.
It's a tough spot. Like I don't know where he goes next. Like I don't think we've seen the last fight of his career, but it is one where he is getting up there in age. He has had his championship reigns and it just becomes difficult. Like Jones and Miocic, I think a lot of people would be interested in that fight, but I also feel like if you are negotiating with John Jones, it's going to be a very expensive fight for the UFC to put together. And are they going to have that motivation with two individuals that I think have had difficult relationships over the years with UFC?
Yeah, and then you go down the list of other contenders, and the division is very thin, and because Stipe is such a GOAT heavyweight, you want to put him against somebody that's going to be worthwhile. So either another big name or somebody who could make a name off of him, but there really doesn't feel like there's anybody in that position right now in the division. So he's almost in like, obviously he lost and he had the title, but it feels like he's sort of in that Leon Edwards zone.
And it's a very tough transition when you go from being used to fighting in championship fights and having pay-per-view points, and all of a sudden, they want to match you with a Curtis Blades or a Jairzinho Rosenstruck, and it's not going to be as financially lucrative as your championship fights that you have become accustomed to making that amount.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the reason why I'm sure he's pushing for that Ngannou rematch.
So moving on down the card, Jose Aldo defeated Pedro Munhoz by unanimous decision. First round was very close. They were identical with 24 significant strikes apiece. And it was, Aldo, you could see this game plan of going to the body. Munhoz was loading up on a lot of his shots, and Aldo just kind of pulled away with this fight. The second round I still thought was another close round where Munhoz was landing at times with his right hand, but the key was Aldo utilizing his jab, and we also got the occasional leg kick from Aldo that has been, at one time, was a hallmark of his game plan that he has greatly gotten away from, but we did see a little bit of that output in this fight. But anyway, Aldo, to me, took the second round as well, and then just kind of put on a clinic in the third round. He's going to the body routinely. He landed this triple jab, this great combination that he followed with, and by the end of it, they noted this interesting stat that even though this was only a 3-round fight, Aldo topped his personal best in significant strikes landed, topping 102. That was his previous best. And I find that amazing given like the 5-round fight he had with Chad Mendez and, some of the other 5-round fights he has had. But this was the all-time greatest amount of significant strikes landed for Jose Aldo in a fight. And he took the unanimous decision 30-27. I was very impressed by Aldo in this fight.
Yeah, me as well. I had it the same way, 30-27. He got better as the fight went on. The way he would rip the body, it was like with such mean intentions, like 2, 3, 4 punch combos sometimes. And then he'd like slip off to the side with nice angles, really good defensively. He did get hit a few times, but overall just incredibly sound defensively. And then when the third round came, the way he put it on him, and the way that Aldo put it on Munhoz was really impressive. Just clearly, intent to be more aggressive, look for the finish, make a statement. Didn't get it, but absolutely impressive performance that demonstrates he's still right at the top of this division.
Yeah, that third round, they had noted like throughout the fight, he was landing 58% of his shots, 77% in round 3. So it was it was a really impressive performance. To me, it showcased that this was a guy that's not just clinging to that top 5. It's like he can be a player. I would not necessarily be picking this guy if he were, thrust to the absolute top of the division. But the fight he seems to be interested in is TJ Dillashaw. And that's going to be the ultimate litmus test, Phil. If he can beat a TJ Dillashaw in this stage of his career, then I don't know what the ceiling is for him at bantamweight. But that's a big jump when you go from Pedro Munhoz to TJ Dillashaw. But I would like to see that fight happen.
I think that's appropriate. I mean, Munhoz, as the commentators mentioned, yeah, he has some tough losses, but they're against the top guys in the division. And Aldo has also been fighting the top guys in the division, of course, losing to the former champion. So I think it's a perfect fight to make right now. I know Eric would probably disagree. He's clamoring for that Dominic Cruz versus Jose Aldo fight. But in terms of who's closer to another title shot, I think Dillashaw versus Aldo makes more sense.
I think just if you're Aldo and you do have championship aspirations, like Cruz, just like stylistically, that's a really intriguing fight to watch. It's just, what does that do for Jose Aldo? It's like Dominic Cruz has just, it's just been inactivity. Like he is not someone that, a Dillashaw that does springboard you. You beat TJ Dillashaw, you should be fighting for a championship, even if it ends up being a rematch with Jan or if it's Aljamain Sterling.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So this was a great night for Jose Aldo, 34 years of age.
With 500 years of miles on him.
Yes, he has the Nogueira gene.
Yeah.
Where the age doesn't exactly equal the it wouldn't be your guess, the age. Michael Chiesa, Vicente Luque. I was very excited for this fight throughout this week. I thought this was
I mean, the text
this was
message I
probably
received
the most
today.
interesting fight of the main card for me was this fight, and it only lasted 3 minutes and 25 seconds. Chiesa looked in phenomenal shape. Probably a byproduct of playing Lords Mobile all week.
Yes, you can set up all of your units. You can go to war. It's currently available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Is something not okay, John? You look concerned.
Yes. Sorry, I heard something in my ear. Did you hear that?
I didn't hear anything.
Okay.
Was it
on my end?
Oh, okay. It was somebody telling you that this product placement joke isn't working.
I am sure it was a tremendous product placement joke, but I was distracted. So anyway, Michael Chiesa looked in tremendous shape here. This guy, they were remarking on his way to the cage of just how this guy killed himself to get to lightweight, and it will never not be stunning to me watching this guy. And this guy was able to make it to lightweight.
Yeah, one of the more wilder weight cuts in UFC history for sure. Probably as bad as Anthony Johnson at welterweight.
Oh, you know what? I have to go outside for Tuesday. Can you just go over this fight? I'm literally going to be 60
Yes,
seconds.
no
Sorry.
problem.
I hear the sound.
No. That's fine. No problem.
I have
But
multiple
I
things
will.
going on. I'll be right back.
Yes. As chaos enters the UFC 265 post show, I'll just run down Michael Chiesa versus Vicente Luque. It was pretty straightforward. Chiesa got the takedown after drawing in Luque. Actually, Chiesa landed a pretty good 1-2. Chiesa got on top, got to the back, looked for the finish, but unfortunately he didn't have the double hooks in. He only had sort of like this cross on one leg, and you can finish that way, but Luque was fighting with the hands enough that he lost the leg position, and that was the fatal flaw. Then, as they're getting up, Chiesa tries to go for a takedown, leaves his neck open for the Darce, and that's a wrap. Luque finishes with the Darce in under 3 minutes or so in round one. Incredible performance. Hopefully John will be back soon to go over that one. But an excellent, surprising. Of course, if you were going to pick a submission in this fight, you would not pick Michael Chiesa. You would pick you wouldn't pick Vicente Luque. It would probably be Michael Chiesa. But ultimately, Luque gets the sneaky Darce in there and delivers an incredible win and sets himself up for a really big fight.
I am back, and that was a wonderful recap, Phil. You did a tremendous job.
Thank you.
I cannot guess what you just described, but this was a pretty entertaining 3 minutes and 25 seconds where Chiesa got the takedown, and I think that was one of the major questions of this fight, and Luque was able to reverse and taps out Michael Chiesa. That is a very impressive victory for Vicente Luque. Like Michael Chiesa, that's a really significant win for him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Chiesa had been on a roll. He looked huge. He put himself in such a great position to win the fight. It looked deep on his when he had the back. Luque stayed calm, was able to fight the hands, strip the leg, reverse position, force another takedown attempt, and slip in the Darce. And Luque's looked amazing, right? Like, I mean, you look at his losses, they're only to the top guys, and then his wins of late, finishing Woodley, now finishing Chiesa. I mean, again, this division, it's a log jam, but this guy's right at the top.
Yeah, I mean, this is his third win with a Darce. And also an interesting trivia note, the second time Chiesa has been submitted by a Darce, the other, Jorge Masvidal.
Wow.
Got a Darce on him. So Luque now has won 10 of his last 11 and his fourth straight victory. And after the fight, said, even though he's friends with him, he wants Kamaru Usman, who he is pretty confident is going to get past Colby Covington. That is just a pit stop. And you know what? This is the kind of a performance that I feel every single card we talk about this guy, whether he is involved or not in the picture. But for Leon Edwards, I'm telling you, like, this is the performance ultimately that is going to leapfrog you above people. Like, I have no doubt that if there was some injury to Colby Covington tomorrow and they needed a new challenger, I think Vicente Luque is getting that over a Leon Edwards.
You're probably right about that. I think Edwards recently has said he wants the Masvidal fight, which, from a ranking standpoint doesn't make any sense, but it sounds like, okay, he gets it now. This is the only way he's going to get his title fight. He beats this guy in big fashion. They have their history, three-piece soda, so why not do it now? So maybe that happens and Edwards can get in there. But yeah, I totally agree. A really exciting performance is like this. This is his second exciting performance in a row. So yeah, if something happens, why not? He totally could be shoved in there.
And an equally impressive streak to me. Like, Luque has the one loss in there, unlike Edwards, but I mean, Jesus Christ, winning 10 of 11 at this weight class. But this was to me a very, very impressive win to be able to finish Michael Chiesa, a very strong win for Vicente Luque. Tecia Torres versus Angela Hill, a rematch from June of 2015. And in this fight, Tecia Torres was essentially her nickname here. She was the tiny tornado. She was just so fast for Angela Hill. And once she got going, I thought like Angela Hill seemed to come out with a pretty good game plan, and Torres was just patient. And once she found her rhythm here, I mean, she just tore it up here on Angela Hill in this final minute, utilizing push kicks, ended the round really strong, landed this big combination. And from that point on, it was pretty much the Tecia Torres show here. I mean, they compared a lot to the last fight at UFC 188. That was a heavy grappling affair by Torres. This one, it was all on the feet. Torres got out of the clinch and is just landing big shots on Angela Hill. She went for like this crazy spin kick, almost like an enziguri, missing Angela Hill. It was like stuff you'd never envision out of Tecia Torres. And then in the third round, it's just a higher volume output from Torres. And anytime Hill would enter the pocket, boom, Torres would send her back. And this was just for Angela Hill, her best output was in the third round, but I still saw this as a clean sweep for Tecia Torres. I had it 30-27. Phil, your scorecard?
I had it the same way, 30-27. I think you really nailed it with the push kicks. And every time Hill would enter the pocket, there would be a kick to send her back, or, she'd slip off to the side. She was just never there to be hit. There was a couple moments where Hill looked pretty strong in the clinch position, but not strong enough that she was able to do too much with it. And Torres was always just able to circle out and, again, get it back into that kicking range where she just essentially dominated. Hill was game, always moved forward. She did land her shots, but mostly she seemed to get frustrated just by the sheer volume that Torres had and the fact that she kept pushing her back from that pocket.
Yeah, Torres had like this real terrible stretch where she was thrown in there against, some of the top strawweights in the division. She lost to Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Zhang Wei Li, and then Marina Rodriguez. She's now won 3 straight. Do you think that she can still make a campaign here at strawweight and build herself back up? Like she looked great tonight. That was a tough stretch for her.
Yeah, I do think she can build herself back up. I mean, she's super well-rounded. She looks like she's getting better and better. So I don't see why not. I mean, this Angela Hill is a very popular fighter. And this was outside of the fact this wasn't the biggest pay-per-view, it was a high-profile slot, and she delivered. It wasn't, a KO, which is something we're always looking for when we want to really push somebody. But I think she's going to get, a really top 5 person. And then if she wins that, yeah, why not? Title shot.
And then opening up the pay-per-view was Song Yadong versus Casey Kenny, going another 3 rounds here. This was like 5 straight decisions that we had boiling over from the prelims. But Yadong won by split decision on scores of 30-27 twice, and one scoring at 29-28 for Kenny. It was a very there were several very close rounds to this fight. I think you could probably have a range of scorecards. I did have it 30-27 for Yadong. I thought he was much quicker throughout this fight and just seemed to be able to land at a lot more of a consistency than Casey Kenny, who was throwing a lot, and he would land some, but was also missing on several of them. Right near the end, Yadong had blocked 3 takedowns and then ended up giving up one to Kenny right near the end. But I'm kind of curious how you scored this, Phil, because it was a very close fight, even though 2 of the judges had it 30-27. They were still some close rounds in there.
Yeah, Casey was always pressuring, and the strike counts were close. But Yadong was really keeping him off with a very effective jab, and he came forward himself as well. I had it a 29-28 for Yadong. I gave Casey the last round. I thought that was the one that was the closest. I was pretty surprised with Yadong. I knew he was a good fighter, but I thought that the pressure of Casey would ultimately, he wouldn't be able to handle it, considering he's so young and inexperienced. But he passed the test with flying colors, and a really great bounce back win for him.
It doesn't seem like he's had that breakout performance yet, but he's 6-1 with a draw in the UFC so far, and extremely young too. Like, he's someone that's been around for a minute, but is only 23 years of age, and I think that he still is growing, and I think that he's one bantamweight that I would very much be interested in to see. The fact that they got a pay-per-view slot here, I think that is always a good sign, and it's a very deep division at 135 pounds. So trying to stand out in a big way, it's a challenge, but we will see.
Maybe he could, maybe it could be him versus Dominic Cruz, right? Dominic Cruz just beat Casey. He's the 23-year-old from Alpha Male. Let's bring back the Alpha Male.
There's an interesting story there. I don't think that's the worst idea.
I mean, what else are you going to do with Cruz unless you're going to put him in a Legends type fight?
I think with Cruz, it's what do we want to do with this guy? Do we want to just pair him out with there is the novelty of doing a rematch with Dillashaw, or do you utilize him against younger fighters? And then it's like, is Cruz on board to take those kinds of fights? I don't hate that option, especially with the Alpha Male history.
Yeah, I think the impression I got, just sort of way that Cruz has been talking about his next fight, is he understands, what spot he's in, and he's not really in a spot to ask for a specific name. But I think, he wants somebody higher ranked than him, and he wants something that's going to theoretically lead him to a title shot. And this is somebody who is higher ranked than him, I believe now, or it'll be right there. It should be.
Yeah, at bantamweight, I've got the rankings actually right here. I don't know where
I have it as.
Yadong isn't even ranked, and neither guy is ranked. So that kind of tells you the depth.
Cruz is
15th. Oh, sorry. I thought we were talking about Yadong and Casey Kenny, but yeah, Cruz is 10th. Yeah.
Yeah. So Yadong doesn't fit. I mean, he will be ranked, I think, after this. He won't be ranked higher than Cruz, but anyway, it still fits. I think it's a good match. There's a good story there, and yeah, always fun to do Dominic Cruz, the Alpha Male Killer.
The Alpha Male Killer. Then we go into the prelims. We haven't seen the bonuses yet. This has to be fight of the night. Bobby Green and Rafael Fiziev. This was an incredible fight.
Absolutely. We both mentioned this on the pre-show, how excited we were. Fiziev is like a real expert at kickboxing, and Bobby Green has been in the UFC for a while, has had, tough up and down, looked great at times, looked bad at times. He looked really good here. They both looked really good, and it was an amazing, incredible technical kickboxing battle.
This was maybe the perfect fight for a Fiziev to see like where he is at. Bobby Green is a tough fighter to deal with. He's got a very different style that is going to force you. That it's largely designed to force the opponent to enter and make mistakes so that he can counter on you. So it was, a bit of a puzzle here for him to figure out, but I was doing pretty well here in the first two rounds. I thought that Fiziev was the superior striker, and it was very frustrating because anytime he would land, Bobby Green would just shake his head like, not good enough, not good enough. And it would just like he did it with such authority that it was like, you're almost like negating the work that Fiziev has just done here. But, in the second round, I gave Fiziev the first round, and I also gave him the second round. In the middle of the second, they just start trading in the middle, and this crowd goes nuts. And Green takes this kick to the body and just shrugs it off. Green, you can see him really start to piece everything together right near the end of the second round. And that set the table for round 3, which was a total Bobby Green round, except for one person in the Toyota Center who happened to have a pencil and a scorecard. Fiziev is tagged by several right hands, and he's eating more shots. Green is just piling up these strikes. He eats a head kick, but then fires off more shots. and ends the round tremendously well. Bobby Green outlanded Rafael Fiziev 74-35 in round 3. There were debates, was this a 10-8 round or not? If you wanted to go 10-8, I would not argue with you. I went 10-9, but if you want to go 10-8, that's great. What you can absolutely not go is 10-9 for Rafael Fiziev, as this one judge, Joshua Ferraro, did. We got the scores of 30-27, 29-28, 29-28 for Rafael Fiziev. I scored it 29-28. Phil, if you scored this 30-27, we have to move on. We cannot do any more shows together.
Let me just edit my existing. No, I had this the same way as you.
This was crazy. This was utter craziness.
Yeah, the second round was closer. It looked like Bobby got hurt in that round, so that made it, I guess, easier to score for Fiziev. But round 3, it was just one-way traffic. I mean, Fiziev was still in the fight. He was still moving forward, even though he was clearly tired. But as you pointed out, 2-1.
Strikes. Exactly. It was, Fiziev, like 35 strikes in a round is nothing to, just shrug aside. But he was doubled in significant strikes. It kind of puts that 35 into perspective here. But nonetheless, this was an excellent, excellent fight. I have no doubt it is going to be fight of the night. I thought this was one of the better fights of the year. I wouldn't say the fight of the year, but this was a really great fight.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun moments, a lot of back and forth talking. Fiziev is a really exciting guy to watch. I think there's a lot of fun opportunities for him to, have banter, and he's an interesting personality.
Yes. So he improves to 4-1 in the UFC. He had lost his debut and had scored wins over Alex White, Mark Jacasey, and knocked out Renato Moicano in his last fight back in December. So has now won 4 straight at 155 pounds. Vince Morales and Draco Rodriguez fought at 135 pounds. I gave Morales the first and definitely the third round. I thought the third was the strongest by either fighter of the fight. So I had this 29-28 for Morales. It was a very close fight. In the second, Rodriguez was able to get several takedowns, but none of them really amounted to anything because Morales just kept popping up, and Rodriguez cracked him with this left hand. So the lone round I gave to Rodriguez was the second. And then in the third, it just seemed Morales piled up the pressure and was able to stop takedowns and just the clearest round to me of the 3.
I had the score the same, but I had round 1 to Rodriguez with round 2 to Morales because Morales had dropped Rodriguez early in the round, and so that was kind of the difference maker. But round 3, it was pretty clear that Morales had done enough to, separate himself, and easy round to score.
Then we go to Ed Herman, 40-year-old Ed Herman versus Alonzo Menafield at 205 pounds. At one point during this fight, Dominic Cruz was talking about how long ago it was that Ed Herman was making his UFC debut back in 2006. And he threw out this story that like the UFC was illegal in 50 states. It's like, dude, the UFC was never illegal in 50 states. It certainly was not illegal in 50 states in 2006 when, dude, the company had exploded by then. It was pretty popular by 2006. It was just a very
I saw Ed Herman fight in Montreal, and that was only a few years after he had been in the UFC. So, and that came well after all 50 states were allowed, or at least most of the states, because New York came late. But Cruz may need to check his timelines.
The amazing thing about Ed Herman, too, is that when you go back to 2006, he was part of the 3rd season of The Ultimate Fighter. And since that time, there's like a stretch of, there's like one full calendar year he didn't get a fight in 2010. But every other year, he's got in minimum one fight, and coming into this one, he had won his last 3. So the guy has been durable.
Definitely. to note, one of those was a Strikeforce event. He was on Strikeforce.
That's right. He was loaned
Marquardt.
by them. That's right.
Yes.
He was loaned by UFC for a Strikeforce event.
Yes. Durable fighter. Some gets a win, gets a loss. Tough fight for almost anyone. Tough one for him today.
This was a rough one for Ed Herman. At the beginning, Herman was able to hit this check left hook, and then Menefield was covering his right eye for most of the round, but still did a lot of damage to the lead leg of Ed Herman. He still won the round, and Herman's leg is beginning to swell, and it would only get worse. In the second round, Herman was pretty much just loading up and swinging. And listen, Ed Herman is a fun fighter, but I mean, it felt like watching, the style of a fighter from another era. It was just, a different level of, technical striking here. He was and granted, he was basically on one leg by this point as well. That probably didn't help his setup here. But I mean, he's still coming forward. It's not like this guy was not bringing this fight to Menefield, but Menefield just cracked him with a left hand, is kicking his leg apart, and Herman is having trouble standing. He switches stances and then takes one final leg kick at the horn. And Menefield, I thought this was a 10-8 round. And the doctor comes in to check on his shin, and he's got this growth coming out of his shin. But the doctor says, you're good to go. So Ed Herman continued into this third round. And you know what? Herman made it to the end of this. It was still another Menefield round, but I mean, Ed Herman's still throwing by the end of this. He definitely gets a moral victory by getting to the end of this fight. But Alonzo Menefield is your winner by unanimous decision on straight scores of 30-27.
Yeah, not much more to add. Ed Herman, veteran, tough guy, obviously. But yeah, it looked pretty brutal. Like the leg was so bad. And clear, he was forced to switch stances, and it looked like it was like the first time he'd ever stood in that stance in his career. Rough go for him. I'm not sure if we're going to see him in the UFC again.
I think that he at least has those wins coming into this fight that, I mean, it'll be his decision, but I don't see the UFC not offering him another fight. I think that he gets the invite to come back, but I mean, you're 40 now, and look at tonight. Like, they're putting him in there with killers, like an Alonzo Menefield. It's like you're 40. Yeah, there's a lot of miles on Ed Herman at this point. So I mean,
maybe he sees it as like, oh, I was so close. I almost had him in there.
Just that one shot. And then the prelims opened with Jessica Penne submitting Karolina Kowalkiewicz in 4:32 of the first round. Kowalkiewicz got this takedown, and Daniel Cormier, Dominic Cruz described it as a sweep, and Daniel Cormier said that wasn't a sweep, that was a body lock takedown. And this was the first fight I watched, and these two were just like bickering at one another, and I was like, if this is going to be the next 6 hours, this is going to be dreadful. But they got on the same page. Penne landed several big shots, and she was able to get to the mount, and then she's rolling for the armbar. Kowalkiewicz tried to slam her out, but Penne was locked on this arm, and then finally just got the full armbar and submitted Kowalkiewicz. Penne was in tears afterwards. She, of course, missed 4 years. She had this whole battle with USADA that her sanction ended up getting reduced, but she was looking at a 4-year suspension, and it ended up being 4 years between fights for her. And she came back earlier this year. She won in April. So she's now won 2. And she just said, like, I can't get that time I've lost, but I'm going to make the most of what I have here. She just seemed like so grateful to be able to fight. And conversely, for Kowalkiewicz, she is now 0-5 since September of 2018. And I could see this being the end of Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Phil. I mean, she has fought some big names. Some of those losses were to Jessica Andrade, Michelle Waterson, Alexa Grasso, but 0-5, not many fighters that survive 5 straight losses.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think it's pretty much guaranteed this was her last, time in the UFC. And I don't say this with any type of pleasure, but this was one of the worst fight IQ performances that I can recall. She made a very poor decision early to follow Penne to the ground, and then that led to her being on her back from that takedown sweep, whatever that they've decided. And she got put in an armbar. There was so many opportunities for her to escape. She had two really great opportunities to escape. She was able to get on top to put pressure on the arm. But just tons of foolish moves that led to her demise. Kind of sad to see, because at one point, she was somebody who we thought could be the top of the division. Always tough to see somebody go out, with 5 losses in a row in any fashion. But yeah, not a good performance at all.
She had, I would say, her peak moment to me. If you want to be really specific, she had that one really great round against Joanna at 205 at Madison Square Garden. I'm pretty sure she lost 4 of the 5 rounds in that title fight, but she had one really great round against Jędrzejczyk. But I mean, it's, she was someone that came in with a lot of hype and interest behind her. She got up to the championship level. But I mean, 0-5, it's just, I'd be stunned to see her back. I would imagine, whether Bellator has an interest in her, whether she is an attractive opponent for BKFC to pair with a Paige Van Zandt, maybe that is a direction she goes.
I mean, that's certainly more in her skill set, but I mean, is that something that, you really even want to do? I mean, I guess it's a lucrative option potentially, or it's like a option, but I'm not sure that necessarily appeals to, every fighter out there.
And quickly here, these are the results from the early prelims. Manel Kopp, who missed weight, coming in at 129 pounds, scored this amazing knockout of O'Day Osborne at 4:44 of the first round when he landed this flying knee and finished him with strikes. If not for the weight cut, I'm sure would have been getting a bonus for this. This was a really spectacular knockout.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was begging for the bonus, and DC had to inform him, you don't get a bonus when you don't make weight.
Miles Johns knocked out Anderson Dos Santos at 116 of the third round. He was just tagging him with rights and then nailed him with this left to the body, and this right hand over the top dropped him. Another strong knockout victory here on the early prelims. Melissa Gatto defeated Victoria Leonardo by TKO. This came after the second round with a doctor's stoppage, as Leonardo ended up re-breaking her right arm that she had surgery on this past January. The doctor determined it was broken, and that was it. It was called off after, and that's really tough when you've have a pre-existing problem with an arm, and now you're back to square one of the whole injury process.
That is 5 consecutive numbered UFC events with a broken bone. So I don't think that is a record that will be broken anytime soon.
Oh boy, you really just put that one together. You were up late thinking of that one. And the card kicked off with Johnny Munhoz Jr. submitting Jamie Simmons with a rear naked choke, 2:35 of the second round. Munhoz had his back, was threatening with the choke. Simmons was fighting it, but then Munhoz just dragged Simmons back to the mat and just locked on this rear naked choke and submitted him. 2:35 of round 2. So 4 finishes to kick off the early prelims of UFC 265.
Yeah, the early prelims were really good. If you're going to go back and look at any of it, I'd say the Miles Johns and the Kopp fights would be the ones to take note of, because both of those guys have some potential.
So the bonuses here, if I am looking these up correctly, we have.
They're out.
So Ciryl Gane got 1 performance of the night bonus, as did Vicente Luque, and as expected, Rafael Fiziev and Bobby Green got.
That's interesting because I have Mark Raimondi reporting something slightly different. He has,
you know what? There's multiple performance of the night bonuses here. There's got 4 for.
Oh, there's 4. So yeah, I've only got, okay. So
it looks like Ciryl, Gane, Vicente Luque, Jessica Penne, and Miles Johns all got performance of the night bonuses, and they gave out the fight of the night bonus to Fiziev and Green.
Okay, so then I guess just that Gane one was missing from Raimondi's tweet. So, I mean, he definitely deserves it. I mean, it was a flawless performance.
This is what I'm reading on SureDog. So it looks like they gave out an extra $100,000. How kind.
It was a special occasion.
It was 265. Do you remember what was
the first ever French interim heavyweight champion?
It's cause for celebration. Do you, as we're at 265, do you remember what was UFC 165?
Was Brock Lesnar fighting?
Nope.
Then no, I don't.
Jones Gustafson at the Air Canada Center.
Oh yes, the John Jones is home away from home for a little while. Toronto was his spot. That was the time when I think he went to visit Open Mat. Do you recall that?
I was not there at Open Mat, but I will take your word for it.
So so Open Mat was the gym that John and I both trained at separate times, but
I would have been training around this time at Open Mat.
Yeah, oh for sure. And so he when Jones came to Toronto for Fight Week, the owner of the gym, Elliot, let him use the space for just, a little bit of training, warm up. And he did some nice things. He tweeted out, there's some nice verbiage on the wall, believe in yourself. And he took inspiration from some of that. So that was cool. He made a few trips to Toronto, I guess maybe because, he drew well here. Maybe because his hometown is Buffalo, or just because of the hot Toronto market.
Yeah, he had the Machida fight here, he had the Vitor fight here, and then Gustafson. So it was fairly regular occurrence each year for 3 years in a row that Jones ended up fighting here. Before we wrap things up, as we mentioned, there's no UFC card next week, and then August 21st, it's Jared Cannonier against Kelvin Gastelum. But the next pay-per-view is not until September 25th. And listen to these top fights, Phil. Alexander Volkanovski, Brian Ortega for the featherweight title. This has been delayed since March, and then they ended up coaching tough. Women's flyweight title fight, Valentina Shevchenko versus Lauren Murphy. That's Phil's main event. The return, tentatively, of Nick Diaz, his first fight since January of 2015 against Robbie Lawler in a 5-round welterweight fight. Curtis Blades versus Jairzinho Rosenstruck. Jessica Andrade versus Cynthia Calvillo. And we've got Merab Dvalishvili versus Marlon Moraes. So those are 6 intriguing fights on top of this.
That last one is the little sneaker. That's a really exciting fight.
Marlon Moraes on this card, which he will probably end up being on the prelims as well.
Yeah, probably the top of the prelims, I imagine, with hopefully the way that one turns out. Yeah, Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega. What an amazing fight. Volkanovski has just been incredible, and Brian Ortega looked so great in his last fight. And yeah, man, Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler, I am down. Let's do it, baby. I'm so excited.
Over or under 2 rounds for Diaz and Lawler?
Are these scheduled to go 5, or are these scheduled to do 3?
Diaz and Lawler are scheduled for 5.
I say it's over 2 rounds. Yeah, I think. Yeah,
I'm going on the under on this one.
Okay, all right. I'm going to predict a Nick Diaz finish here. He's going to finish Robbie Lawler, but it just might not be in 2 rounds. You think it's going to be the other way, eh?
Listen, anyone trying to predict this fight is just in the dark, just throwing darts. Okay, there's absolutely no way anyone can have any solid analysis of what to expect from Nick Diaz in 2021, and frankly, where Robbie Lawler is at in his career. This is a total fight that you're just purely guessing what is going to happen, but it'll be entertaining.
I hope so. I mean, even the buildup, is what happens. Is Nick even going to show up for the press conference? If he doesn't show up for the press conference, that makes all this news. This is there's a title fight. I get it. This is the biggest fight on this card. This is a massive fight. The Nick Diaz army is significant. It may not be as big as his brother Nate, but the fact that he's been off for so long and he's going to have that Nate juice right beside him, this is a huge fight. I think
Nick fighting will be the main event of this. No, I'm not saying it goes on last, but this will be the main event to people buying this show.
Yeah. And I just feel like as we get closer to that event, it's going to feel like a really big event because of that.
Yeah.
Like, when's the last time anybody talked to Nick outside of that Ariel interview from a couple years ago, right?
So that might be the last one.
Yeah. So just people are just going to want that. Like, what does he have to say, even if it's, nonsense?
This is also going to be their International Fight Week. So they're going to do the Hall of Fame ceremony on the Thursday night. And so this will be kind of their usual July events happening in September, but barring any problems in the US. I mean, that's when you're forecasting all these events and stuff. I think that has to be in any promoter's immediate future is, looking at contingency plans. I think like that's kind of how you have to be thinking as well.
Well, fortunately for the UFC, they always have that apex to go back to.
Dana's he's got Abu Dhabi, Houston, and Florida.
Houston.
I'll just keep on rolling. So
that's
there you
right.
go.
Yes.
All right, we're gonna wrap things up. Thank you to everybody that has joined us tonight live.
So then I just want to do a couple promos, real quick promos. Or were you going to throw it to me? Did I ruin it again?
I am always just going to lay the groundwork to send it over to Phil Chertok to let all the masses know.
I'm such an amateur.
How can they support the great post wrestling and Phil Chertok?
Well, first, of course, how can I not mention the fantastic T-shirt that we have on sale? Your Eric MMArcotte T-shirt, limited edition, on sale from now until the end of August. Get it while it's hot. The hottest T-shirt in post history. And John, I know that you spent a lot of time as the Intercontinental champion. It was a grand time when the crown was on your head. But we've actually not had a champion for quite a while now, and I've decided that it is time to have a new face for the promotion. But we're gonna have a new title, and it's called the Meta Multiversal Championship, and I will be crowning it on Twitch on Monday, and I'll be joined by a post luminary, Jordan Goodman. So if you want your chance to be crowned the champion at this free pay-per-view event that we're titling All the Marbles, join us. You can find all the details on Discord, so join the Discord. We're going live after our friend Dickie Bird's Twitch show on Monday is over. And yeah, it should be a lot of fun. We look forward to seeing you there. I'm sure you'll be in attendance, John, of course. Have you ever seen that movie, All the Marbles? Peter Falk, he's apparently a coach of female wrestling tag team.
I have not. No. You recommend it?
I haven't seen it, but it has come to my attention. And the poster alone and the plot makes me think it's can't miss. So hopefully I'll have a review for the next post show.
All right. Well, folks, new championships falling out of the sky are very much in vogue, and we are jumping onto that trend. So do follow along, and you can follow more of Phil on Twitter at fishbulb_CA. Did I get it right?
That's correct. Yes.
Give him a follow. Yes. And he is always camped out in the Post Wrestling Discord. So you can access that at postwrestling.com and enter the world of the Discord. It's a different it's a different world over there.
It is a different world, a world of GIFs and emojis and sarcastic remarks and fun people and fight predictions and pictures of your lunch and all sorts of fun stuff. So come on in, join the Discord, postwrestling.com/Discord, the place to be for every live event.
All right. That's going to wrap it up for us. Thank you to everybody for listening, and we will speak with you next time after UFC 266.